Hello, my name is AstroGamer Steve, and I was challenged recently to find a good gaming PC to build one for less than $400 or £256, which is the exchange rate at the time of filming this video. In any normal PC build recommendations that I do, the prices will be rounded to the nearest £5, as prices will fluctuate anyway, and they will be based on the cheapest vendor unless I specify that it's my recommended vendor. Now, this is the cheapest build I can conceive of building with a decent performance in gaming, and yet you'll be able to play modern games with medium settings at reasonable frame rates with this machine. Note that I've had to choose vendors that I have no experience with in order to bring the price down, as recommended vendors is a luxury this build can't really afford. So, for the insanely cheap CPU, I've chosen the AMD Athlon II X2 250, which you can get for £11 or $17, link in the description. This is by every stretch of the imagination a low-end CPU, but that reflects the price. For the incredible and somewhat suspicious deal of £11 or $17 at the link in the description, you get 3 GHz clock speed. I would always recommend 3 GHz as a minimum for modern games like Battlefield, COD, Far Cry, and this just scrapes it. Most chips will overclock to 3.4 GHz, but I doubt an overclocking enthusiast would be looking for a $400 PC. If you're willing to spend a bit more cash on a less bottlenecking CPU, check out my other build recommendations, because at this price you can't get more than 2MB cache. It's not much, but it will do. Assuming you buy all your games from Humble Indie Bundle, you won't need more than 2 cores, but the next generation is a 4-core future. Not that those games won't run on 2 cores, but they won't run as well as possible. If it's any consolation, your low-powered CPU has a significantly lower power consumption than most similar CPUs and all modern CPUs. That means you don't have to buy a powerful PSU, meaning power supply. For the motherboard, I've gone with a FOXCONN A7-8AX 3.0, which you can get for £35 or $53. You have to check that the socket and chipset on your motherboard is compatible with your CPU. As for features, it's not anything special on paper, although it has a whopping 12 USB connectors. They're all USB 2.0 and they all share bandwidth, so take into consideration that plugging more USBs in will make them slower. SATA 2, which is now outdated, 3GB per second bandwidth, which is actually fine, 5.1 surround audio, which is quite nice for the price, and of course it supports your RAM. Up to 16 gigs of it actually, but we don't need that much. For the graphics card, I've gone with an AMD RADEON 7790 overclocked 1GB standard version, £85 or $130. With the gaming build, a good graphics card is essential, as this determines how well your system will run games, as long as it isn't bottlenecked. This is a surprisingly good graphics card for a low-end build. 128-bit is enough to utilise the standard 1GB of RAM in this card, but if you're going to splash out on a 2GB version, I'd recommend looking for one with a 192-bit interface. I would seriously recommend 2GB or more GDDR5 RAM if you're expecting to play high-end games, but this card handles quite well with just 1GB. Very impressive GPU clock speed and memory speed for a budget build. However, it's the overclocked edition, so it's even faster than normal. I thought it would be appropriate to get it pre-overclocked in a $400 build, considering that the target audience for this price point might not even know what overclocking is, let alone how to do it. A single stat you can use to measure power is teraflops. This has 1.79 and the GTX Titan has 4.5, and that's the most powerful single GPU graphics card on the consumer market. Also, don't give a flop about the Titan's double precision. That's pro-grade tech and it comes at a pro-grade price. In fact, the Titan is a 780, but with double precision and 3GB extra RAM. That costs £300 extra. So, for the RAM, I've gone with Kingston HyperX Genesis 4GB 1600 MHz for £30 or $45. It's not one of my go-to brands. Where I can, I would recommend Kingston HyperX Beast or Corsair Vengeance, or of course Corsair Dominator Platinum, but that's premium and you can't be picky with a budget build. 4GB is enough to run most games, full stop. However, Many programs, including video editing software like Sony Movie Maker Platinum Suite 12 and digital audio workstations like Reason, both of which I use regularly and can say from personal experience, use more than 4 gigs of RAM most of the time. I'd like to put in 8 gigs because the Xbox One and PS4 both have 8 gigs of RAM. Xbox One might be going 12, but next-gen games are going to start utilising that. Even though some of that RAM is being used up by the operating system, 1 gig by the PS4 OS and 3 gigs by the Xbox One OS, I believe, they will be using more than 4 gigs very soon. You'll be pleased to know I don't have as much to say about the clock speed. 1600 MHz is good. Storage, I've gone with 1TB Western Digital Blue, which you can pick up for £50 or $75. 1TB is a decent size for a gaming PC, even if you're doing a bit of video editing too. I've easily filled up 2TB of my 3TB hard drive thanks to all my 1080p videos, like this one, and game files are only going to get bigger, so I wouldn't go less than 1TB really. Western Digital have a helpful colour coding scheme which helps you choose which drive is best for your specific needs. I'll be making a separate video for this, but basically Western Digital Blue is the best balance between performance and efficiency. For the case, I've gone with the NZXT Source 210, which you can get for £25 or $40. The NZXT Source 210 has enough room for all our components. The build quality is surprisingly uncrap for a case this inexpensive, and with a budget build like this we can't really consider adding fans, so the 7 120mm fan spaces aren't really important. For the power supply, I've gone with the Corsair CX430, which you can get for £30 or $45. You have a bit more power than you really need. I could have gone with a 400 watt PSU, but this was the best deal I could find. Plus, it's 80 plus bronze certified, which means it's 80% efficient, and because of this you can tell it's good quality. You should never go for the cheapest PSU you can find because a poorly made PSU can and will kill your PC. Getting an 80 plus rated PSU will generally cost you a bit extra up front, but you'll save money on your electricity bill in the long run. So there you are. Even if you don't use the exact parts that I have used, and honestly I'd go with a more expensive and reliable vendor like eBuyer for the CPU. A link for that will also be in the description. This is about the best you can expect for $400, and I'd try to find a motherboard that's not too much more expensive but also has SATA 3 and USB 3. Remember, it also has to have an AM3 socket. So regardless, you've probably learnt something new, and all that comes to £266 or $410. Slightly over the budget, but it's the right price point, and I'm much more familiar with mid to high end gaming PC components, so I plan to make more expensive PC guides in the future because I'll be able to do a better job, and I'll be able to I'll have the financial room to suggest vendors that I have had personal experience with. So, my name has been Astro Gamer Steve, you've been watching this video, and I'll see you next time.